What's the most weird, terrifying confession you've heard from someone that was drunk? Part 2. Please like and subscribe to support this channel. Not a confession I heard, but one I told when I got too drunk. I was telling my friends how I missed my friend who died in a car accident, and I told them I was trying to suppress my feelings during the funeral. Next thing you know, I was bawling my eyes out and saying he didn't deserve to die at 19. Still remember my friends trying to calm me down, but I missed him like he was my brother. Still do even after I sobered up. Honestly, I was probably that confession for my friend. About a week ago I got absolutely trashed at his house because I was so fucking depressed, and I ended up crying on his couch. Gotta love it when you have a fellow guy friend you can be emotional around though. I must admit, about how much I wanted to kill myself. A couple days later I landed myself in the hospital for a suicide attempt and got out 2 days ago. Sorry bro, didn't mean to put that on you. One of my girl best friends got drunk and confessed her love for me, woman facepalming light skin tone. She pulled out a ring her grandma gave her, and tried to give it to me. She said she was ready to leave her boyfriend, and her baby's father, if I would be with her. It was so incredibly awkward, and the last thing I wanted to do was hurt her, but because she was drunk I couldn't tell if it was just drunk banter, or a legitimate confession. We've not addressed the situation since. One day he threw up suddenly and had to leave class. It being middle school, people made fun of him. I don't think people knew he was having such a hard time. Listening to her talk about how it was so hot that he was so sick was difficult to say the least. My friend and I kept giving each other the "can you believe this?" look. Not sad, nor weird or terrifying. Actually one of the sweetest things ever. At a meetup of internet friends years ago, one lady, Kat, brought her husband who got super drunk. We had a strange few moments in the bathroom where he told me that she didn't want kids, and he told her he didn't either. But he told me that he lied, he really did want kids. He'd always dreamed of having kids, but he loved her so much that he was sacrificing his dreams because of his love for her. I never told her what he said to me, and I'm sure he doesn't remember because about 30 minutes later he pissed himself and passed out. But I have told her she was a lucky lady to have him. Our bathroom moment has become a long-running joke within our circle. My sister told me that one of her best friends from high school, they aren't friends anymore, confessed while they were rolling that she used to spend a lot of time online video chatting to men. She had a cat and apparently she used to get the cat to lick her. But she found the tongue too rough, so she recruited her 2 bunnies. She would use fudgesicles on her nips and other areas, so they would lick them for the guys on camera. She said she even got caught by her dad with the bunnies in her bed. The girl is a super prude bitch too, so this was a wonderful lull to me. Got drunk with a friend in Paris. He told me he had been planning to kill his family, mom, dad, and sister, and even made one attempt. He told me that he once purposely caused a gas leak in their house. Luckily, one of his family members noticed a funny smell and the intended outcome was averted. No one suspected him of causing it. He told me he didn't make any attempts after that. The saddest part is that he wanted to kill them because he was worried about what would happen if they found out he was gay. Pretty fucking extreme to want to kill your family for something they haven't even done yet. That was the last time I spoke to him for obvious reasons, but we have mutual friends, so I'm sure I'd hear if something ever did happen with him. That was almost 4 years ago though, and I think his parents know that he's gay now. Not a drunk confession, but it was over drinks, and the most weird and terrifying one. I have a friend whom I love dearly. She's quite unique and loves to play with knives and everything glittery. She told me her younger sister was raped by 2 men. She knew who they were, so she and her father kidnapped the men, took them to a forest, tied them to a tree, tortured them and cut off their penis. She told me this 2 years ago and I still don't know how to respond, what to do with it, how to feel about it. Met a cute French girl when traveling around the Philippines last summer. Ended up hitting a couple islands with her over the course of a week and a half. She was really shy when we first met, but ended up opening up quite a bit the longer we were together. One night we got hammered and she told me how she had witnessed her mom try to kill her dad by cutting his throat with a kitchen knife. My friend was 6 at the time. Had this guy the first worked with in a kitchen. He was a tough guy from NYC, which will be his moniker from now on, a kitchen veteran, and honestly an asshole. I couldn't stand him, he couldn't stand me. NYC had a raspy voice and a huge scar across his neck and a face to match the hatred he had inside from a fucked up past. Guy had been through the ringer. I stayed away from him because I got a serious bad vibe from him. He was friends with our kitchen manager, though. Manager was going through a rough illness that gave her pleurisy in her lung. Essentially she coughed so much she had a tear in her lung, which from her reports, fucking hurts like hell. He started going over to her place and helping out around the house, keeping her up on her meds. This is relevant. NYC, unsurprisingly, had serious addiction problem. You name it, he took it. Had connections with local dealers and was pretty much always stocked up. Well, turns out his idea of helping my manager and friend was fucking drugging her to sleep with illegally obtained script meds as soon as she got home from work. I'd noticed that she seemed a lot more tired while she was ill, but I'd had no clue how bad it was. Another coworker, my roommate, who got on with NYC okay, and had him over to our apartment a couple times, finally realized something was going on when he went to drop food off at her place and she was all out of whack, slurring her words and barely able to keep her eyes open. So she finds this out, confronts him, and there is a huge blow-up. NYC gets fired. She tells him to GTFO of her life. I, foolishly, think my hands are washed of him. Well, remember how my roommate had invited this bastard over to our place before? Day after the blow-up, NYC lurches to the curb in his SUV, totters to my front porch where I'm sitting having a smoke, and starts talking to me, vodka bottle in hand. The guy is clearly on all kind of downers, he can barely speak. I, a woman, who is already wary of this guy and who has been told what the fuck he considers help, text my roommate, who is at work, asking him WTF to do because I want as far from him as possible, but I can tell that if the guy doesn't get some water and some food in him and stop drinking, he's in serious trouble, and I'm not a sociopath so I can't leave him like that. Roommate keeps telling me to hold on, he'll be there as soon as he can, but work is slammed. 30 minutes turns into 2.5 hours. And the whole time, NYC is talking to me. About how he really was helping my manager. About how he'd done it before with other friends and asterisk they had appreciated it, yeah fucking right. How he'd stabbed people before and he was so fucking sorry, he was so fucked up and why did he keep doing these things, on and on. The more he talks, the more terrified I am of him. I wish I had just gone in the house, locked the door, and called EMTs and police, but I was frozen and every time I even moved he said, "You're not gonna leave me, right?" Everyone leaves me, and I know he always carries a knife. Eventually the roommate came and I noped the fuck out of there. Didn't come home until he was gone. TLDR. Scary guy from NYC was drugging my manager to help her. After the ensuing showdown with her angry ass telling him to fuck off, he then showed up at my apartment drunk and drugged and said a bunch of scary, fucked up shit to me. A woman he barely knew who was afraid of him. I've said it once before on a thread like this. But around 2 a.m. during a very drunk game of Don't Judge Me, but one of the women said she has rape fantasies. This spurred my close friend to then reveal to everyone in the room about how she was gang raped at gunpoint as a teenager. In detail. The woman who said she had the rape fantasies then said she was sorry but that she was raped too, and that's what weirdly spurred some of the fantasies, like a self-punishment thing. I think 1 or 2 other people at the party then divulged their own sexual trauma. Got really dark that night. Was in training with a guy from another country. Nice, quiet guy around us. Got to drinking and relaxing one night where we are telling stories. He then tells this story he thought was hilarious about how they went into a jail, took out a political prisoner, beat him to death and dumped him on the side of the road. Nobody was expecting that. He didn't seem to realize the reaction the story was delivering. That her father had molested her for years, most likely her siblings well, and one of the siblings was pressing charges. She wasn't sure she was going to testify against her father because then she wouldn't have funding for her apartment, college, nor would the other siblings. Also, she was supposed to be meeting her girlfriend there, but she thinks she got ghosted and hasn't heard from her all day. And did she mention she is supposed to testify tomorrow? I had just met her that evening, and she was beyond dumb drunk when we got in there. I saw some people being creeps and got a bottle of water, and just went outside for a cigarette and offered her one. I was more hoping to do a, "Hey, here's some water, stay safe, bye," and start my night. Instead it was that story, and then a friend, I guess, of hers coming out to check on her. I didn't think much of it, but she was wearing a backpack and the friend was super concerned about the contents and if I'd seen them. I just said maybe consider taking the friend home. It wasn't even 10 p.m. and she was past done for the night. I have a friend who has been in the Marine Special Forces for some time. He's been on multiple tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, and several other hairy places. When he gets real drunk, and it's just his closest friends from childhood, the stories start to come out. At the beginning of the stories he's always manically laughing, but by the end he has tears rolling down his face as he trudges through the rest. We'd all get quiet, and try to comfort him. While he repeats, "It was my duty. I was doing it for my country." 10 minutes later he'd start to tell another story, manically laughing. Poor dude needs help, but that's just not the culture he's been in since he was a young man. Apparently, that's not what men do. Men just deal with it. Quote, "Today, 3 hours ago, from a drunk man on a train. He was speaking to all of the passengers, said he's 60 and his mother died. He called to her, 'Sweet mama,' said her funeral is tomorrow and that he will rest alongside her, said he will kill himself. From what I understood, a lot of his family is dead now, except his wife and children. Apparently 3 women have died on him, don't care what that means. He left a few stops before mine. Recovering addict here. A girl I knew in the day witnessed her BF commit suicide by lying on the train tracks. We hung out quite a bit when using, and after piecing together a few things she'd let slip, I figured out they had a suicide pact that she agreed to without ever intending to follow through. She was cheating on him, and I guess this was an easy way to get out of the relationship. The last time we hung out she said, 'I can't believe I killed my BF over this guy.' The guy she was cheating with who had upset her that day. It finally all clicked in that moment, and I created distance with her after that. In all honesty, it's all conjecture, but I'm willing to bet money that's the real story. A friend of mine, woman friend at that, once confessed that she really wanted to rape a schoolgirl. Not have sex, she wanted to rape. That was weird and creepy. There's also this other woman who told us she would never feel complete until she managed to kidnap and torture a person, preferably a stranger, and she would certainly do so before she was too old to do it. We pretend not to remember and just don't talk with her anymore. A guy the first knew in high school, who I hated but rolled in similar circles to me unfortunately, confessed to me while drunk that he liked to find passed out girls at parties and finger them. I was disgusted, and even more so when I tried to tell my other friends and they just didn't believe me because they said, "He's so full of shit anyway, he's probably lying and being a fuckhead." Later, turns out he wasn't wrong, and 2 girls accused him of said behavior after high school was over. Not to mention his ex accused him of raping her and frequently hitting her. Dude was a fucking lowlife piece of shit all around. And #X200B. Once my cousin, 18M, came home pretty hammered, and he sat down with me and my other cousin, both us 16 at the time, and started telling us how he had a hookup with some guys earlier that day. He then proceeded to show us his ass, which was covered in bruises and scratches. At first me and my other cousin laughed and was like, "Whoa dude, that's some kinky stuff right there." Then he sat down and explained how he didn't consent to any of what happened to him. He thought he was meeting someone for a casual hookup, then the guy's friend showed up and they tied him up and they did some horrible things to him. That's why he got so drunk, cause it messed him up for a while. All in all, it was a rough night. He was drunk, and obviously we told an adult about what happened to him, which he got angry about. He decided not to push charges, but damn, it was terrible. A good friend of mine was best man at a wedding, and met the groom's dad, who was once a Navy SEAL. He said he was friendly once they got talking, and they hit it off pretty well. After the wedding reception died down, he ended up staying up late drinking whiskey with the dad in his hotel room. He asked him about his time with the SEALs, and before he knew it he broke down crying while telling a story that he apparently hadn't told anyone. He said that during the Cuban Missile Crisis his unit was sent on a mission to let Castro know that America was only a few hundred miles away, and that they essentially wiped a small village off the map, women and children with it. My friend has no idea why the DOS chose to tell him this story, and says he felt pretty terrible afterwards about how this guy had been living with it all these years. Pretty tame compared to most of the comments I've read here, but I had an ex suddenly break down and open up about his past mental health issues and suicide attempts. It actually strengthened our relationship since I'd attempted in the past during a particularly dark time myself and could relate. We spent probably an hour or so just hugging and crying, and it's probably the closest I've felt to anyone. Unfortunately, it didn't last as he was only here for a few years for university and I wasn't willing to move. But we still keep in contact and he seems to be doing well enough these days, as am I. I still worry about him though. A friend admitted that he basically raped someone. In his words, "She never said no, Talked about a threesome, but then didn't really seem into it, and all the typical BS that people say. I had to point out all the bullshittery he was saying, and how not being socially aware, the excuse he used, isn't an excuse or reason to do what he did. Scary cause even after I straight up called him out on it, he didn't really take it seriously or believe me.